I don't really know where to begin, honestly. This video is 14 years in the making now. Wanting to make a video on this game was the whole reason I made my channel. All the way back in 2012, 14 years ago. I've struggled with making this video on every level. I've had every issue you can imagine. Software issues, hardware issues, data corruption issues, spiritual issues, relationship issues. The desire to make this video has survived all that and more. This is a video about one man's struggle to show the world the finest unk slop they've never seen and his refusal to give up on that idea. For context, I'll try and keep this opening segment brief. There's other videos about this particular subject, so I won't get too into the weeds if I can help it. There's this little magical window in time from 1994 to about 97 or 98, where PC games were really starting to hit their stride in terms of weirdness and originality. Some truly landmark titles came out during these years, and for the most part, have received the love and attention they've deserved. However, there's an entire ocean of games from that time frame that haven't seen an update for modern systems ever. They released, they were played, and that was that. PCs in general were also starting to hit their stride, with hardware updates coming fast and hard during those years. This has made emulating some of those games a nightmare for a very long time, with the more obscure ones requiring what amounts to black magic to run, and that can have its own baggage. There's been an ISO dump of this particular game floating around the internet since around 2007, probably even before that. I had a hard copy of this game back in 1998, and I've kept the ISO for almost 20 years at this point. It wouldn't be as easy as installing it, no. Over the years, I'd had the most success running the game in a Windows 98 virtual machine. But finding drivers for old OSs isn't really my strong suit, so I'd experienced audio bugs, rendering glitches, things of that nature. It certainly wasn't in any condition to be recorded for a video, and even then, play sessions longer than 45 minutes weren't guaranteed. Eventually, after a few years of staring at the ISO's directory in File Explorer, I had an epiphany after trying to install it for the millionth time and being denied, even with the holy compatibility mode enabled. It definitely wasn't a 64-bit install program, and if it was a 32-bit install program, it would run, although maybe with some issues. But to not install at all meant that it was probably a 16-bit installer. How then was I going to get a 16-bit installer to run on a 64-bit operating system? It was around this time that I turned to Reddit for any shred of information. After creating my own post on the subject, I left disappointed. Even now, after this many years, there are only 9 comments on the post and half of them are mine. It was starting to look grim. After many nights of digging around online, I found something. A forum post, for React OS of all things, about converting 16-bit install launchers to 32-bit ones. Literally the exact problem I had been trying to solve. They even had a download link for a program. Provided that the program I was trying to install was using the old Install Shield launcher, I'd be able to swap them out and install the game. Install Shield used to be a fairly common launcher at the time, and as luck would have it, the game in question used it as well. Quick swap later, and there I was, installing it to the C drive on a modern system, and this was around 2017 or so. If everything had gone well, I'd have made this video 8 years ago instead of now. Turns out that just installing a game originally made to run on less than a Pentium into your super ultra modern PC with absolutely no setup isn't exactly a recipe for a successful gaming sesh. Audio that was originally supposed to stream off the CD will skip, and after 2 or 3 times looping, will crash the game. And no, turning off the music doesn't actually stop the music, it just lowers the volume. And it doesn't stop the crashing. Since you didn't and can't alter the clock speed the game is now being forced to operate at, all the animations are now moving at ludicrous speed. Also, I hope you like audio cutting out 3/4 of the way through the sample, because that's clock speed affects that too. Like I said, no condition to be recorded and barely what I call playable, and quite frankly, this game deserves better. So this project more or less stayed on the shelf until the day I could iron all the kinks out. I've been keeping an eye on the XOWin project, in particular because I'd hoped they'd solve the problems I'd been having. After finally getting my hands on XOWin and with no small amount of anticipation, installed the copy of the game that came with the bundle I received. Upon loading the freshly installed game, I noticed that the Windows environment is in 16-bit color mode, which, while ugly, won't stop the game from playing. XOWin auto-launches the game, so I don't have a chance to change any settings. The game boots up, looking worse than usual thanks to the new color palette, I start up the campaign and it crashes as soon as I interact with the telephone because that's a load-bearing piece of the game loop and it was not installed properly. Exit to Windows, fix some of the color settings, reinstall, crashes again. Adjust some things, try it again, crashes. Now, it's been 14 years and more, so I wasn't about to let that stop me. Start digging around, find out that ExoWin failed to install the sprite folder properly, which may just be a corrupt data issue. So I just swapped the bundled ISO and ExoWin with my own copy of the ISO, reinstall it, and bada bing, now it's working like a charm. Time to finally play the game again. What game am I even talking about? I'm talking about an old game, older than Half-Life even. This is vintage Unkslop. This game is actually obscure, and nowadays, that's not an easy feat. In an age where every quote-unquote unknown game has a slew of video essays done about them, it's been frustrating to sit on this for so long. I've seen a lot of creators with way more talent than myself covering titles adjacent to this one and yet never touched this one, like a century egg. However, much like a century egg, its time has come to be consumed. This is the game that got young Axelord into not only squad level strategy games but also management sims as well. Before I ever played XCOM, I was clicking away at this game's maps, trying my best to understand why I was losing so bad. The game I'm talking about is the 1996 PC release from Random Games and New World Computing, Wages of War, The Business of Battle. A scrappy little game made by a scrappy little team, hoping to contend with its big brothers like Jagged Alliance and XCOM, two games which are still going strong and are widely loved by their fan bases. Meanwhile, Wages of War has sat off in the corner waiting for either mommy or daddy to remember its birthday, but that birthday gift never comes. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Its legacy isn't as revered as those other two mentions for some good reason. All in all, it's not a perfect game. The interface is most definitely from 1996, which, depending on your preferences, can be a good or bad thing, I suppose. The game's soundtrack consists of a handful of appropriate-ish MIDI tunes that are less than 2 minutes long, and when each mission can last up to an hour and change, it quickly becomes a Noriega's Compound situation. So go ahead and try the music out for a little while and then turn it off. It's a shame, really, because the MIDI compositions are actually quite good. Some of them are downright bops. It doesn't change the fact that any fruit gets rotten after a while. Big shout out to the composer, Christopher Gregler, who I'll touch on more later near the end of the video. The mechanics and systems are poorly explained in the game, as in, not at all, and making heads or tails of it the first time can feel like trying to uncrack an egg. The combat can be extremely unforgiving, with your merc's weapons jamming or even breaking the first time you pull the trigger, sending stalker players into an uncontrollable frenzy. Even still, your merc can sprain an ankle completing the Herculean task of scooching to the left a little, giving the DayZ players that warm, fuzzy feeling they get when they drag their broken legs into an abandoned house to find a can of beans. By the way, you will be charged for that merc's broken ankle. You agreed to pay their medical expenses when you signed the contract. Beyond all that, however, lies something more. Like the leprechaun captain of a submarine, it's charming, engaging, a little deep, and wholly unique. Beyond all that lies the business of battle. Wages of War is a squad-based strategy sim where your main objective is running a mercenary company and keeping it profitable. Be it by haggling with a man over the contract for his daughter's life, or stripping the enemy for anything valuable to bring home with you. No job is too big and no profit margin is too small. Your only goal is keeping your company, the aptly named Mercs Inc., in the black by any means necessary. So, armed with a certificate guaranteeing that you more or less know what you're doing, and a small amount of 90s office space, you begin to make a name for yourself in a world ripe with opportunities for those of a more gray moral complexion. There's a fair amount of mundane office interactions, mostly surrounding your video phone and fax machine. So if you've ever wanted a 90s office simulator experience, this game's got you covered. I'll say this much. It's strangely engrossing in its own little disgusting way. Sure, your business is gruesome, but someone has to do the paperwork, and that someone is you. Contracts come in on your video phone, wherein your potential customer gives you the elevator pitch for their job. Paperwork comes to the fax machine, where you get to comb over the finer details of the assignment. Rescue this person, blow up this pipeline, steal this, sabotage that. It doesn't really matter. What matters is the money. And in a fun bit of cutthroat business, you get to haggle over your pay, including any advances or bonuses involved. Now, this isn't Fallout or Morrowind, and you won't get to waste their time all day with counteroffers. You get 2, maybe 3 chances to milk them for all they're worth before they retract the offer and give it to one of your competitors. Oh yeah, you're not alone. There's 5 or 6 other companies, and while you won't ever actually cross paths with them, maybe, their successes and failures are tracked alongside yours. A constant reminder that if you're not making that money, someone else is. So, push for some more money, and when you're satisfied, accept the job. After a brief phone call to conclude your business, you'll immediately begin dealing with the annoyingly sensible character of your accountant. A hilarious 1990s caricature of someone who's savvy with numbers. He mainly acts as your liaison with the intelligence and travel agencies, which you'll need for basic reconnaissance reports and, well, travel arrangements. Both intelligence and travel present 3 different options with differing levels of accuracy or travel speed, respectively. You can spend more money to reduce the amount of time it takes to receive your intel or to shorten your travel time, up to a point. The 3 companies offer base increases from each other, so you can only improve the numbers so much. Sometimes, if time is a factor, it might be advantageous to spend a little extra on your intel just so you can get it quicker, sparing more time for training or travel. Going the cheap route, however, might leave you with faulty intel and the loss of most, or all, of your team, which is, above all else, expensive, and not the kind of thing you want to take on the chin if you can help it. And you can help it, because along with your basic items like level layout and enemy numbers, each intelligence report concludes with the agency's estimation of your chances of success, how many casualties they expect you to incur, as well as how many team members you should bring, as well as any special equipment they might need to get the job done. Pretty handy. So you've got the contract, read over the intel, ordered a pizza. What now? Now, you get to swivel your office chair to the left, and while the game lets you pick the order you do these in, I find it's best practice to go through the Rolodex first and hire your team members. This is where the game starts to feel a little like Jagged Alliance, because you have a somewhat colorful roster of mercs at your disposal with a wide range of lads and lasses at your beck and call. From the innocently named Andy and Gina, to guys you know are badasses like Blackbeard, Mighty, and El Toro. Each merc comes with a little backstory, just a quick blurb that maybe sets up their motivations for being a mercenary or any relevant history they might have. Fun fact, if you reinstall the game in the Exowin virtual environment and make sure to choose the maximum or custom install, this will give you access to the game's data files on the virtual hard drive where you can modify mercenary names, vitals, and backstories to your heart's content. It's an old .dat file, so you can just open it with Notepad right there in the Windows environment and edit it. If anyone finds a way to open and edit old object files from 1996, you could probably edit the mercenary portraits as well. Even the name strip on the Rolodex is locked behind an old .object file. I suspect they might be text-based coordinate files because every program I've tried so far has failed to open them, including online tools recommended to me by others. If anyone who ever hears this happens to know, please reach out to me. Anyways, you thumb through your Rolodex until you feel you found the right guy or gal for the job. You won't be able to hire any elite individuals right away. You're a small-time outfit that no one's heard of, and the vets aren't about to stick their necks out for you just yet. So, you'll have to start off with some greenhorns. Unproven and eager, the future success of your company rests on their poorly trained shoulders. Once you have a team sorted out, you can move on to the quote-unquote fun part, leasing the weapons and equipment your mercs are going to need for the mission at hand. It's explained in the game's manual, but basically what it boils down to is that it's now illegal to privately possess a firearm worldwide, so companies such as yours have to lease them from wholesalers as the need arises. This is accomplished via a stack of magazines that sits on your desk, with more magazines becoming available as your reputation increases and you successfully complete more missions. Since you have no reputation to start with, you're limited to Abdul's Armaments of New Jersey, what appears to be a budget weapons distributor. Their selection is meager at the start, with only a few pistols, shotguns, and a crossbow to kit your troops out with. A few defensive grenades, which could be duds, some basic armor, knives, and assorted accessories such as wire cutters are all you really get for the first couple of missions, and you'll have to make do. Sure, you might get lucky and scavenge an SMG off a fallen enemy, but you might just as easily find a small caliber handgun, or worse yet, find that the weapon you just pilfered is in fact broken, once again causing stalker players to begin disassociating. Handily, any mission critical equipment you need will have a post-it note attached to the page, with a helpful don't forget message written on it because yes, you will forget, and it will end with your team leaving the area with their heads on the chain.
Shameful display!
Looking through the pages, You get a teaser of what's to come as you see all the ordnance not yet available to you, and there's quite a bit. Sniper rifles, AKs, M60s and PKMs, the Heckler & Koch G11, that so-called Kraut space magic gun that was super popular in films in the 90s. Some other noteworthy bits of kit include a mortar launcher, Panzerfaust, satchel charges, explosive timers, and so on. Really a shoe for every foot. After taking a moment to longingly gaze at an LAW, you move on with it. So double and triple check your order, and go ahead and place that bad boy. Time will pass, as it does, and eventually the silhouette of 8 beefy individuals will appear outside your office door. Perhaps it has something to do with that large rectangular crate suspiciously labeled armaments. Once you click on that crate, you're whisked over to the equipment screen. Once you've fully observed the zesty pose the paper doll is striking, you can begin to distribute your equipment amongst the team. Each merc has their own encumbrance stat, and this will affect their movement during the mission. So it's crucial to find the balance between having everything you need and staying mobile enough to keep your team more or less intact. Alternatively, you could load each merc down to the last available pound and watch as they slowly make their way up the battlefield like a squadron of battle turtles. Either way, it's your call how you choose to get them out. Once everyone is equipped with crossbows and pea shooters, you get the option to squeeze in some last-minute training for your team. Once again, you have 3 options: mission skills, technical skills, and weapon skills. You allocate how much time you'd like your team to train, and they go off and do it. What's neat is that they keep any skill improvements they make, meaning you can keep your greenhorn squad and watch them evolve into elite badasses themselves, giving it that satisfying feeling of progression that comes with organic skill increases. Once they've finished up, there's really nothing left to do. Call your mother if you haven't already, and get ready to go off on your first mission. You are treated to a delightful PCX format image of your team reconnoitering the compound which the first mission takes place in before you are presented with the mission screen and a dialog box asking you to choose where you'd like your first mercenary to insert. There are some pretty strict rules regarding where your team can deploy onto the map, and they vary from mission to mission. The game really doesn't signpost or indicate where you can or can't deploy them, so, much like your very first time, you just kinda have to click around blindly until you find something that fits. Once you discover where your team can actually insert, you can go ahead and figure out how to best approach the compound. It's got a fence all the way around it, and you'll need to get a merc up to the fence in order to cut your way through. So it'd probably be best to pick a spot that has ample cover and is hopefully out of the way of any wandering patrols. Pick a spot, remember not to bunch up your units, and proceed to start the mission proper. Immediately, you're hit with the sheer amount of information at the bottom of the screen. The UI is cumbersome. It's kind of ugly. There's 100 buttons, and when you click, there's another bunch of buttons behind the sub-menu. Some that are grayed out, and some that aren't. Thankfully, they all seem to have icons on them, although some of the symbols are a little more esoteric than others. You have a window that displays the current merc statistics. Clicking that same window switches it to weather information, strangely enough. There's a little EKG, ECG representation of their current health, a drop-down window to change what weapon they have ready at the moment, a visual indicator of their weapons available ammunition, a portrait of their face, and another drop-down menu that lets you switch between your available mercenaries. Upon clicking the portrait, it switches over to a silhouette, which allows you to see where any injuries they've sustained are located. All in all, a fair level of information and complexity. I've always personally loved seeing the little silhouette get bandaged up after being healed. It's such a little thing, but where they get injured matters. Some injuries are more severe than others, and the game reflects that accordingly. Sometimes a merc, after having their wound treated, will collapse or become incapacitated anyways, and you only realize it when it dawns on you that they haven't popped up in the turn rotation for a while. That's because they're in a coma behind that low stone wall, and it'd probably be best if someone got them out of there and evac them from the mission area. Just remember to turn around and come back after medevacing your wounded comrade. Cowardice will be punished, here and in the afterlife. There's also a little window that displays their current weapon, but that's fairly obvious. Taking a further look at the icons suggests that there's a little nuance to the gameplay. You have your basic stances: stand up, crouch, lay down. You have your walk, run, and crawl buttons. You have a little fist, a crosshair, what looks like a mortar tube, and a grenade. All pretty self-explanatory upon closer inspection. There's a sub-menu that allows you to do some auxiliary commands, like targeting enemies you can see or checking the mission dossier. The bottom right corner houses the minimap, and below that is the time of day with the elapsed mission time below it, as well as wind direction to the right. Once you come to grips with the UI and take your first trembling steps into the AO, you'll start to notice how green everything is. Don't worry, there's other colors for different maps, like white, yellow, brown, and gray. After a few turns in this green hell, sometime sooner, you'll eventually be spotted by one of the wandering patrols outside the compound. Oh yeah, and their dogs too. This game immediately forces you with the very real possibility of having to put down a pooch or two as soon as you start playing the actual game. I don't know if this was a deliberate design choice by the devs or what, but the dogs definitely don't sound happy when one of my mercs puts a crossbow bolt in them from half the map away. You will also notice, the guard accompanying the dog has made himself known, that you have very limited visual feedback as to what your enemy is equipped with. At a glance, you'll only know whether it's a long gun or a handgun, and even then, you're going to have to wait for them to fire at you to figure out whether it's a shotgun, rifle, or a machine gun. While I want to dislike this, I can't. It's one of those little touches that makes this game engaging for me. I can't tell what they're holding until I take it from their hands. So, the guard is likely halfway across the map and peppering your team with buckshot, most likely missing. Unless someone in your team can maintain a clear line of sight on him, you can only assume that he's radioed the rest of the guards, and they're now probably going to start moving the hostage to a more secure location in the compound. And eventually you hear the sound of doors being kicked open to confirm that. Now if you're me, then you usually deploy your team in 2 squads of 4 adjacent to the compound's gate, primarily because it's a short distance with a clear line of sight to all the primary areas of concern, like that guard hut next to the main gate. Now this is a bit of a crapshoot, because that guard could be in the hut minding his business and not looking your way. He could be out on patrol somewhere on the grounds, making his way back to his little guard hut. The point I'm making is, you had no real way of knowing that the guard was hiding in there, clutching a double-barreled shotgun and watching as your man Tiny approached the fence because you mistakenly believed you'd given him the fence cutters when really, it was Gil, who was some 30 yards away in a bush trading fire with a guard halfway across the map. There was really nothing you could do when Tiny ended his turn and the guard popped up and fired through the window, shattering the glass and ending Tiny's mercenary career as soon as it started. Tiny indeed. Although a quick check of his health portrait suggests the wound was anything but, he's done for. The mini-map confirms it, as healthy characters are displayed in yellow, critically injured characters are displayed in red, and fallen ones in black. Tiny's been black dotted, the ultimate end for many in this line of work. It's part of the business of battle, after all. After returning fire with the gate guard for a few turns, and unjamming that revolver that got stuck as soon as you pulled the trigger. And how, pray tell, did the Colt Python jam in the first place? I know that cylinders can drift and get misaligned, and, dud ammo is a thing, but still. Anyways, you get lucky and the guard not only opens the main gate, but also tries to push out from the guard hut, allowing your team an easy opportunity to practice their aim and rendering the acquisition of 2 pairs of fence cutters pointless and redundant.
Come on, man.
The other guard is still off in the distance trying to pepper you with a scattergun, but he eventually runs out of shells and switches to a sidearm. You'll have to push on your team and start closing the gap if he's to have any kind of success, so you better hustle through the gate and towards the mansion if you want to avoid a pincer maneuver. After all, there's probably another patrol somewhere, as you can still hear dogs barking. Your team scurries through the gate and begins taking up positions near the entrance of the mansion, with a few remaining behind to keep watch for the lone guard seeking revenge for his dog. This part can get tricky, as the mansion opens up to a big main foyer followed by a bunch of hallways and little rooms, so there's never really any telling where they'll be trying to move the girl, and once the gunfire starts, they will be moving her. This is aside from the obvious risks, like accidentally hitting her instead of her captors. It has happened before, and it will likely happen again. Kind of an Ian shot me in the back situation. Yes, he did in fact do that, but he did it with good intentions. Once your team is stacked up on the door, you kick it open and, lucky you, the girl was being moved through the foyer by one lone guard. Quick exchange of gunfire, someone butts him with their weapon, and boom, 1 guard down, 1 hostage free. Now you just have to get her out the door and away from this tropical prison. 1 rearward maneuver later, with a quick pit stop to pick up Tiny's body, not strictly necessary, but I'd rather not leave him there. And within a few hours, the young woman is reunited with her father, and you get to go back to the office and crunch the numbers. Once you're comfortably seated back in your office, you'll soon get a phone call from your accountant either congratulating you on your fiscal responsibility or condemning you for your reckless spending. Either way, he'll fax you his analysis and breakdown of the current monetary situation. In this particular case, the contract was for a grand total of $859,000, minus $689,599, including an $89,000 payout for Tiny's death, and a medical payout of $79,000 for 1 gunshot wound and 1 sprained ankle, that makes your total profit a staggering $169,401.
Wow.
Well, not a momentous amount of money. Between our total net worth and our newly gained reputation, we're now ranked second amongst the private military companies, so that's worth something. And, most importantly, our accountant didn't complain. I'd call that a success. This represents the core game loop of Wages of War. Accept contract, set up contract, execute contract, count up the pennies afterwards. The missions vary somewhat, with the very next mission being a search and destroy mission for a weapon stockpile, and the one after that a time-sensitive insertion into a radiated desert in search of plane wreckage for a briefcase. But, at the end of it all, you're back at the office poring over an expense account that your unamused accountant faxed over to you in a rage. There's a strange and wonderful dichotomy on display here between the gritty and nasty world of executing these contracts and the logistical work that goes into making them happen. I think it's quaint that the game forces you to spend half your time in a 90s office simulator, watching as the fax machine slowly spits out your travel arrangements. The point-and-click interface of the office serves it well, and the lack of obvious menus keeps the actions taken therein nice and immersive, allowing that diegetic feeling of being an office drone in charge of a cadre of camouflage killers to really set in. Granted, it looks and plays like a 90s Windows game, but that has now come full circle to being representative of and strengthening that 90s aesthetic that so many games are desperately trying to recapture these days. This game simply just has it as a result of being what it is. Staying on the topic of the office and the point-and-click interfaces, I want to take a moment to discuss what I've learned about how the game works based off the available information in the game's folders. Interestingly, the entire office and most of its environs operate in the same exact manner as point-and-clicks of the era. There are the basic images of the office, phone, etc., which serve as the scene itself. Then, most likely underneath that image is a colored mask of the interacted areas of said image, which is what allows the mouse cursor's location to trigger the different names of the hotspots, as well as the relevant mouse clicks. I know this because this is exactly how this works in Adventure Game Studio, a program I've spent almost 15 years toying with. In AGS, you can use different colored masks to represent different areas of interaction in any given scene. I just think it's neat that they essentially had to develop 2 different game systems in parallel, albeit one is slightly more complex than the other. It's part of this game's scrappy charm for me. Back to the game loop. I quite enjoy the process. Some contracts are a little more demanding than others, having very specific weight requirements or weapons restrictions, providing a challenge and demanding flexibility in response to the constraints. Other contracts are more of a free-for-all, giving the player target-rich environments and occasionally even providing some weapons and equipment on the house, sometimes even good ones. I won't turn down a free MP5, and it's great for the budget. One pair of missions has you defending your HQ from an enemy attack, with the very next mission being your team counterattacking in response. Another still has your team paradropping in, leaving you with the task of regrouping your scattered and under-equipped team while getting them to their equipment canister, which has parachuted in alongside them. There are genuinely tense moments that arise organically, like your main bomb guy is down and now someone has to go collect the satchel charges and timer off his body while still taking fire and running low on ammo. These kinds of moments seem standard now, but in 1996 they really weren't. This game does a lot of things right, and when it all comes together it's like a gelatinous cube. It will absorb you. However, there are some negatives I do want to briefly go over. I want to preface this by stating that I truly love the game, and these criticisms simply come from having played the game in its current state for as long as I have. That being said, let's get on with it. The game, in my estimation, gets away with a lot by being charming. I personally think the mission interface is dreadful, with the edge scrolling being particularly egregious. Good luck scrolling the map. I think the devs must have realized it was bad and didn't really have time to fix it. But thankfully there's a button that centers your view on the current merc, as well as a button to cycle through visible enemies. In addition, you can also left click the minimap to position the camera accordingly. The UI is a little awkward. A right click context menu, even an era appropriate drop down menu, would have alleviated some of the click fatigue that will eventually set in with the casual player. A lack of hotkeys exacerbates this even further. You must use the mouse to navigate the UI, and this invariably makes missions take longer than they need to. As a kid, I didn't know any better and had no qualms about playing games like this, Diablo, StarCraft, or Fallout with just a mouse. But now, as an adult, I got shit to do. I need this to move along just a little quicker than it currently does. A touch of customization would have gone a long way as well. Something that Jagged Alliance ended up getting right with its IMP system. The ability to customize all or even one of your mercs would have helped hook the player further, allowing for more personal stakes to be set. Like I said, you can alter some of that info in the game files, but it would have been nice to have that functionality built in. This game is practically begging for goofy merc portraits and absurd names. I think this is a result of the game taking itself too seriously, despite its overall campy tone. The manual often refers to the game as a simulation, and from what I've deciphered of the AI and weapons files, that mostly holds up. In turn, it kind of lacks some of that gaminess that its contemporaries ended up embracing. The mission maps themselves are also kind of bland. Hacienda in the jungle, pipeline in the snow, desert. Interiors are generally sparse, although some are a little more detailed than others. Overall, there's just not a lot of life on most of these maps, and it becomes noticeable fairly quickly during the first mission. Even on a small and condensed map like that one, there's just not a lot of visual business at any given time. A little stream animating gently, a jeep, a statue. It's all very functional and serves its purpose, if a bit plain. A lot of more visual flair would have assisted in breaking the monotony of looking at all that green, or white, or yellowy orange. The pathfinding on the maps can be pretty hit or miss as well, with doorways being particularly offensive perpetrators. Mercs will often refuse to pass through a doorway if you click too far past the other side of the door, and navigating around any of the level's objects can be a chore, with your merc helpfully chiming in, "No can do," because you clicked a little too close to a potted plant. The distinct lack of visual detail makes navigating the levels a little vague at times, and elevation changes sometimes are a little hard to discern. Now, before I make this criticism, I'd like to take a moment to point out that it's only through the miracle of CD storage. Yes, I know optical media bad, but it's only through the miracle of CD storage that this game was able to have character barks at all. And it most certainly would have been easier and cheaper for the devs to simply not have any dialogue. I truly and honestly do appreciate the character voice lines more than I dislike them. That, however, doesn't mean that there's nothing to dislike. There's only two voices, a generic male and female voice. The majority of their lines are delivered in a droll, almost lackadaisical way, as if they weren't actively infiltrating a compound or crossing enemy territory. The audio quality is fine for when it was made. It's just a shame it was wasted on such a bland delivery. The female voice lines are delivered only marginally better, with both voice actors only really adding a sense of urgency if the character is being fired upon or is wounded. I'm not an actor, and these are surely the voices of either family members or the devs themselves, but a little pathos wouldn't have killed them. On the topic of killing, the game's random events can often seem completely unfair and tend to have brutal consequences that will occasionally snowball out of control, costing you mercs or, worse still, the mission. A sprained ankle is one thing and easily laughed off. It's quite another when your merc gets an interrupt on a guard who just popped around the corner only for your weapon to break, making all that ammo you're carrying as useless as tits on a door. Weapon jams happen, and as a stalker player I'm pretty used to those. But that doesn't alleviate the agita I feel when I've spent 3 or 4 turns trying to unjam a revolver before the guard Swiss cheeses me or my mates. Also, that sprained ankle needs immediate medical attention, otherwise it, I don't know, spreads? This is part of the esoteric black magic that is the game's injury system. I've been playing this game for 30 years and I have yet to fully understand it. I've had mercs with sprained ankles just suddenly take a turn for the worse and just end up sprawled out on the floor incapacitated. I know that running while already having a sprain increases the risk of injuring it further. In the game, I mean. In real life too, I suppose. But I'm not a doctor. I barely even like Dr. Pepper. Anyway, sprains can get worse. Mercs with bandage wounds will sometimes pass out and regain consciousness multiple times before finally either getting with the program or giving up on life altogether. Even more frustratingly, sometimes you will lose radio contact with a merc for seemingly no reason and be unable to issue them commands until radio contact is restored. Now on paper, this makes sense and is representative of a situation that actually occurs to soldiers even to this very day. The issue for me arises, however, when the merc in question is only 5 feet away from a teammate who could very easily turn around and say, "Yeah, he's right here, would you like me to give him a message?" Instead, the merc is lost in some fucking alternate dimension and no one can find them. It's bullshit, and it might be the most annoying thing that happens gameplay-wise. There's a radio item you can purchase that I think mitigates the chance of this happening without removing it completely. But one, it's heavy as shit, and two, it's not always in stock or available for purchase. So much for that. The music, as mentioned earlier, can get grating after the 30th or so loop. Letting the tracks cycle through would have helped so much. The tracks themselves aren't bad, but might as well be the sound of nails on a chalkboard in a room full of screaming babies after they repeat for the umpteenth time in an hour. Switching it off becomes standard procedure, which is a shame. I love music, and I love making music, but even I can't stand listening to this shit over and over that many times. There are 16 missions total, although a few take place on the same map, so I don't know if they should be counted. This one is definitely a stretch, and more of a thought experiment than a complaint, but a few more missions, or even a mission editor, would have elevated this game to the moon. If 10-year-old me had learned there was a mission editor, I would have spent as much time there as I did in StarCraft's map editor, and I spent a lot of time making StarCraft maps as a kid. Or, on the other foot, a random mission generator. Simpler maps but infinite generation might have helped this game make a bigger splash than it did. I don't know much about this game, but I might know more than anyone outside the development team at this point. Short version, came out in 1996, the IP was bought and sold and has changed hands more times than a briefcase in a heist movie. Multiple times the rights holders have claimed to be developing a remake, but the rights always just ended up going to someone else without anything ever actually coming from it. I kept track of it for a few years in the vain hope I might one day make enough money to bid on it myself, but I'm about to turn 40 and that has yet to happen. I also tried developing my own remake, but I'm a one-man operation, and even after doing the research and learning how to get it done, there was no way I was building a turn-based strategy game engine on my own, so I ditched that. Rightfully so, although maybe a little regrettably. I think there's some genuinely compelling meat on these bones, and a medium-scale remake would serve this game wonderfully. It oozes the same kind of dumb charm that made the macho action movies of the 80s and 90s so iconic. The business of battle is such an absurd pairing of two things that have unashamedly gone hand in hand since the dawn of recorded history. The tumultuous and sordid relationship between conflict and profit. Sure, on the surface many games use a financial angle to some degree. Civilization and Stellaris have their trade and resource balance sheets. EVE Online is, well, EVE Online. And even Bullfrog Syndicate was about managing a corporation. But none of these titles dared to approach the financial management aspect from the view of the real shit, from a boots-on-the-ground perspective. There you are, in your small office, waiting by a fax machine to go over an expense report, getting yelled at by your accountant on a video phone, mere moments after just obliterating a team of guards. There's an almost ghastly realism to that, a place few games dare to tread on ironically, and here it's required. Anyone with any memory of what office life was like in the 90s will know that it's an almost one-to-one scale replica of the experience, forever encapsulated in this game that hardly anyone remembers. I remember, and I refuse to forget. This game rocks. Okay. Maybe saying the office drone experience is required is a bit of narrative hyperbole. The game does offer a scenario mode if you just want to play the missions without worrying about all the number crunching, although you do miss out on the progression aspects as mercenary skills won't carry over between scenarios. So while the option is there still remains some incentive to try the campaign anyways. There was some serious talent at work behind this game. The executive producer at the time was one Mark Caldwell, a man who ended up having his hand in some noteworthy titles of the era, including a bunch of the Heroes of Might and Magic games. The game was designed and conceived by Timothy W. Brooks, a guy whose career in video games spanned an impressive 14 years, where he mainly dabbled in strategy games and being a publisher. Some of his other works include the sequel to Wages at War, Soldiers at War, which takes the same system and drops it into World War II. I'm not gonna lie, I've never played this game before, so I don't have an opinion on it, but I've got my eyes open for it, and if I ever get the chance, I'm gonna give it a whirl. More interestingly for me, however, is another one of Timothy's games that I am very familiar with. He didn't develop this one, but he did publish it. It's Weird Worlds, Return to Infinite Space. This is a neat little game. Kind of like if FTL met Farscape. It's got a goofy vibe, and the runs are short, sweet, and to the point. Most runs can be completed in about an hour, and the game certainly has replayability and charm out the wazoo. I didn't even know he was involved with the game in any way until looking him up for this video. How cool is that? Unfortunately, the website I checked has him listed as the punlisher of the title, which is a shame. Someone needs to fix that man's title ASAP. Some other noteworthy mentions on the team include Mark Fitzgerald, who most notably worked on Warhammer 40k Chaos Gate before turning around and working on what appears to be a bunch of card games. Also a fellow named Andrew Jones, who worked on both Wages of War and its sequel, as well as Warhammer 40k Chaos Gate, Some Terrible Despicable Me game, and then closing his career out with Earth Defense Force Insect Armageddon, which is an absolute banger of a game to end your work on. The sound and music designer, Christopher Gregler, worked on a whole slew of games, but most notably made the jump over to Red Storm Studios and did sound and music work for the Ghost Recon series, as well as the Division 1 and 2, and some Rainbow Six to boot. Oh yeah, he worked on Far Cry 4 too. One hell of a career. Regrettable then that I discovered all this literally the day Ubisoft shuts down Red Storm Studios. I might make a video about that at some point as well. So, by all appearances to me, this was a tight-knit group of individuals who all worked on different games together throughout their life. And to me, that's kind of heartwarming. This was a bunch of young dudes in the 90s all working together in an office, probably not unlike the office in the game, working on this little strategy title for days on end. About 20 of them. Around 20 dudes in a dream. The good old days, if you will. Not that there aren't scrappy little dev teams out there now working on something magical. There most certainly are. But the ecosystem of the gaming industry has changed a lot since 1996, and Wages of War was left back in the 90s, whether it deserved it or not. The game was released to generally positive reviews, with it holding a user rating of 8.2 on Metacritic and being regarded as a well put together and fun game. So why hasn't anyone really spoken about it? Why has Jagged Alliance and XCOM received all the strategy game love? Where's the Open Wages project, upgrading the game to a newer engine and giving it increased functionality and maybe even modding ability? Sadly, I don't have a storybook ending for this one, and really it's only in the last few years that anything popped up on YouTube surrounding it, and even then, I can adamantly say that few have the history that I have with this game. It's followed me most of my life, lurking in dark corners, begging me to make this video here and to let people know, hey, this game existed. It's fucking cool. I wasn't exaggerating when I said this game and this video were the whole reason behind me making this channel. As I've learned time and time again in my life, nothing worth doing is ever easy. So where does this leave us? Well, it's never been easier to play this game since the turn of the millennium, and that's a statement I'd never thought I'd get to make. And if there's anyone in the world qualified to help get this game running should there be any difficulties, it's me. I'm that guy. To this day, if you Google the name of the game in Reddit, my post is the top result. It's pretty sad, because I'm nobody. Yet, here I am now, telling you to find a copy and play it. It's out there. There's ways. If you enjoyed XCOM or Jagged Alliance, even for a second, you'll enjoy Wages of War. It's got that special something, I'm telling you. And if you can see past its little quirks and idiosyncrasies, you're gonna have yourself a good time. This is a game with depth where it counts and charm to make up for when it isn't. In a time where we're all cringing over DLSS 5, seeing all these old school sprites just reminds me of why I love games in the first place. It's a colorful window into a world where your business is battle, and business is good. This video has, in one form or another, taken me 14 years to make, so if you made it this far, I'd love it if you shot me a like and a follow. I normally never ask this in my videos, but I'm making an exception for this video essay, as these are a different beast altogether and require significantly more work. Anyways, I just really need to get all this off my chest, and now I'm gonna, I don't know, go outside and touch some grass, I guess. Thanks for watching, and go play Wages of War. It deserves it.